Honda Motor is Japan's third largest car and motorbike outfit.
Honda is not going to sell you this car.
And it could be dangerous.
For many people in Japan, it was an ordinary day on November 17, 1906. However, it was also the birth of Soichiro Honda, who would go on to change the world in more ways than one. Honda's father was a blacksmith who had a bicycle repair shop, whilst his mother worked as a weaver. Their family was very poor, and of Honda's 8 siblings, 5 of them died during childhood due to poor health. However, as Honda grew up, he became very interested in tools and machines, and was especially keen on learning how vehicles worked after he saw his first car, a Ford Model T, whilst he was just a toddler. He chased after it, mesmerized by its design. That memory and the smell of the oil would stay with him forever. Now around this time, bicycles were becoming very popular all over Japan, and customers began to line up in front of his father's repair shop. Honda spent a lot of time watching his dad work and then practicing repairs himself. Honda even learned how to make his own toys from whatever materials he saw lying around. Within a few years, Honda was regularly helping his dad out in the repair shop. However, when it came to academic learning, Honda did terribly in school. He just wasn't interested in what they were teaching, and longed to be back in his father's workshop instead. Since he lacked interest in school, his grades suffered. The class were given reports with their grades on, which they were meant to take to their parents, who would then stamp a family seal on it to show they'd seen the report card. However, Honda didn't want his parents to see he was failing and disappoint them, so he decided to create a family seal using a scrap rubber bicycle pedal cover so that his teacher would think his parents had stamped it. And it worked. In fact, it worked so well that other kids in his class who were afraid of showing their low grades to their parents came to him asking if he could create family seals for them as well, so they didn't have to show their parents their report card. Eventually though, Honda got caught, and his dad wasn't mad he'd done it, his dad was mad his work had been sloppy enough to get found out. Despite not getting much of a formal education, Honda was quickly developing his skills in his father's workshop, and had a genuine fascination with machinery and engineering. Then in 1917, when Honda was 11 years old, he heard that a pilot named Art Smith was going to demonstrate the aerobatic capabilities of the biplane. So he decided to borrow some money from the petty cash box, took one of the bicycles in his father's shop, and rode for 20 kilometers to the military's airfield to watch the show. Except when he got there, he realized he didn't actually have enough money for the admission fee, so he decided to climb up a tree to watch the demonstration. Honda found it incredible, and this only increased his love for machinery and invention. But when he returned home, his father had discovered what had happened. Luckily, instead of being angry, Honda's father was far more impressed at his son's determination and initiative, and perhaps deep down he was proud his son had the same appreciation for engineering that he did, so he let the incident pass. In 1922, after finishing school, Honda spotted an advertisement in a newspaper for a car servicing company named Art Shokai. The ad said, "Assistant wanted for auto repair shop in Tokyo." He figured that if the company could afford to be running ads like this, maybe they'd have spaces available for apprenticeships for young men like him wanting to get into the trade. So at the age of just 15, he decided to leave home in search of a job, and headed to Tokyo. Going from his small village to the bustling streets of Tokyo was an intense experience. But his hunch had been right, and he was able to get an apprenticeship working at Art Shokai Garage. Unfortunately, on his first day, he was given the job of cleaning up, scrubbing the dirty floors, and preparing meals for the owners. In fact, he would often end up babysitting the owner's child, so not exactly what he'd had in mind. Plus, apprenticeships at the time weren't paid, so he was merely given a small space to rest and a bit of food to eat. But soon after joining, an earthquake hit Tokyo, which caused many of the mechanics to have to leave work for a while to repair their homes. The auto repair shop was now understaffed, and Honda finally got his chance, as he was asked to fill in as a mechanic. By working extremely hard, this role was soon made permanent. Honda was eager to learn and spent his days repairing cars and motorcycles, which at the time were limited to only the upper class. It was here that Honda encountered a very wide range of vehicles from all different manufacturers, which sharpened his knowledge even more. Honda would always take a lot of care in examining each vehicle assigned to him for repair, and on his work breaks, he'd read whatever car-related magazines he could get his hands on. It wasn't long before Honda was not just repairing vehicles, but designing spare parts as well. Given that Honda was doing a lot of great work for this company, one of the owners, named Yuzo, took it upon himself to educate Honda about the business side of the trade as well as the technical side. Yuzo was the ideal mentor for Honda, and it was him who introduced Honda to the world of motorsports. You see, in 1923, Yuzo had decided to begin manufacturing his own race car, and he asked Honda to help him out with building it. Their second design, which they named the Curtiss, ended up winning the 1924 Japanese Motor Car Championship. Honda was on board as the accompanying engineer, and this victory at a young age, both winning the race and the thrill of helping to build something like this, was a feeling he'd never forget, and a feeling he'd continue to chase. When he turned 20, Honda was called up to fulfill his obligations in military service. However, during the medical examination, it was found out he was colorblind and he was excused from duty. Shortly after this, in 1928, his mentor, the owner of Art Shokai, presented him with an opportunity, saying that he wanted Honda to set up his own branch of Art Shokai in Hamamatsu, a Japanese city very close to the village where Honda was born. Given Honda was still in his early 20s, it was a lot of responsibility to run his own auto repair shop. But he clearly impressed his managers, and so Honda gladly accepted. Honda's branch grew slowly at first. It was just him running it all by himself initially, and when people brought their cars in for repairs, some were put off by how young he seemed, assuming that he was inexperienced. But he eventually managed to build up a good reputation in the area, and by the mid-1930s, he'd managed to hire a full team to help. At last, Honda was making good money for himself. He'd worked his way up from an unpaid apprentice looking after his boss's baby to running his own successful auto repair shop. And as a rich young man, Honda was never shy about having a good time. There are many reports of him enjoying himself in the company of lots of geishas, stories of him throwing parties, and even dancing nude at his wedding. Honda worked hard, but he partied even harder. However, sometimes his nights of drinking did not end so well. There was one incident whilst drunk where he accidentally knocked a geisha out of a window from the second floor. Fortunately, she survived by landing on some wires, although they reportedly had to cut the electrical wires to save the woman, which resulted in the entire town experiencing an electrical power outage. Honda also continued to enjoy racing, but that too would nearly end in a fatal disaster when in 1936, Honda was involved in a serious car crash during the Japanese high-speed rally that forced him to quit racing completely. He spent 3 months in hospital and had a permanent scar for the rest of his life. The doctors commented that he was lucky to get out alive at all. The incident was a wake-up call for Honda. Suddenly having an influx of wealth had led him to a bit of a playboy, daredevil lifestyle, but several close encounters had made him reevaluate what he really wanted. He realized that even though his auto repair shop was doing well, he was dissatisfied with car repair. It was time for a new and bigger challenge. Honda saw a lot of potential in manufacturing and asked Art Shokai if he could turn his auto repair shop he was running for them into a separate company where he would produce piston rings. Unfortunately, Art Shokai did not like this idea at all. The business was doing well and making a lot of money. They had no interest in stopping that and entering a whole new field, especially since producing their own car parts rather than repairing them seemed like a lot more risk and cost. However, Honda was determined to pursue his new vision, so he and a friend decided to go into business together, setting up their own separate business called Tokai Seiko Heavy Industry. At first, Honda would still spend his days working at his repair shop, and then spend his nights working on this new car part manufacturing company he'd started, trying to create piston rings. It was exhausting trying to do both though, and he didn't get much sleep. He also took evening classes to improve his understanding of metals and alloys, and for 2 years, he worked tirelessly until he reached a revolutionary piston design breakthrough in 1939. At this point, he turned over his duties at Art Shokai to his trainees and began to fully focus on this new manufacturing company. They began piston production, and for the first time in a while, Honda felt truly excited by his work again. But that excitement was short-lived, as they were soon bombarded with manufacturing challenges. For example, they received an order from Toyota, but of the thousands of pistons they ordered from Honda's company, only 3 passed Toyota's high quality standards. It was a big setback, but Honda decided he'd go visit universities and factories all over Japan to further understand the manufacturing process and develop his skills further. Eventually, he obtained enough knowledge and skill that he was able to produce piston rings that passed Toyota's quality standards. And better yet, Honda figured out a way to mass produce them using an automated process, which meant even unskilled laborers could produce them. This meant he was able to produce them in bulk at a relatively low cost. Orders rapidly increased, and since Honda couldn't keep up with demand from his workshop, he opened a factory to mass produce the piston rings. Unfortunately, just as Honda's manufacturing business was really taking off, Japan was gearing up for war. When Japan entered World War II in 1941, many of Honda's male employees were called for military service, leaving Honda's plant with lots of vacant positions. The war also meant that there were a lot of supply shortages, and Honda had difficulty sourcing materials. When enemy planes dropped fuel cans out of the sky, Honda would tell his employees to look for the fallen cans as they could still be used for manufacturing. That's how desperate for supplies he was. In 1944, it was beginning to look like Japan would lose the war, and when a bomb was dropped on one of Honda's factories, it looked like he might lose his business. In another cruel twist, just a year later, Honda's other factory would be destroyed in an earthquake. It was soul-destroying that what he'd spent years building was quite literally turned to rubble. The company had already been struggling immensely because of the war, but this was the final nail in the coffin for his company. He was going out of business. So Honda sold whatever was left of his manufacturing business to Toyota. There was a massive fuel shortage after the war, and transportation at this time was limited mostly to bicycles. People needed a way to get around easily and cheaply whilst being extremely fuel efficient. So Honda had an idea. He attached a small motor to his bike, which soon caught the attention of people all around the city. Sensing this could be a good solution to his country's problems, Honda created the Honda Technical Research Institute in 1946, using the money he had left after selling his piston ring manufacturing business. The sole purpose of this was to figure out the best way to make motorbikes. Using some surplus military engines Honda had managed to obtain, he was able to successfully build working motorbikes that immediately became a hit in Japan. Soon, he was flooded with orders and ran out of used engines, so Honda developed his own engine. However, to be able to mass produce enough motorbikes to fulfill the demand, Honda needed more money to invest in production. And unfortunately, in the bleak economic conditions following the war, investment was not easily available. But as always, Honda found a way. He reportedly wrote letters to 18,000 bicycle shop owners across the country explaining his idea and asking them to invest in his new motorbike design. 3,000 of those bicycle shop owners wrote back to say they'd invest in Honda's motorbikes. So Honda was back in business. Honda Motors Co. was incorporated in 1948 to manufacture small capacity motorcycles with the goal of producing an affordable motorbike which would help Japanese people more easily get around. Honda also teamed up with business partner Takeo Fujisawa, who provided not only additional investment for the company, but also was a great business operator and strategist, allowing Honda more time to devote to the product side of the business. Honda's first fully fledged motorbike was the D-Type, which stood for Dream, although it was a bit too bulky and heavy. But Honda soon found success with a new and improved model called the Super Cub, which was lighter, smaller, and safer, and an immediate success. Orders poured in from all over the country. Honda then turned its focus to entering the US market. But prior to the 1960s, the stereotypical image of the American motorcyclist was that of a rough, unruly, unsavory character. So to try and change this, Honda ran an extremely successful advertising campaign with the slogan, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." This, mixed with the more lightweight design, encouraged families and younger people to disassociate the motorcycle from previous stereotypes and thus reach a whole new market with their motorbikes. As a result, nearly 1 out of every 2 motorbikes sold in the US in 1964 was a Honda motorcycle. And pretty soon, small lightweight motorcycles were zipping all across American roads. And by the end of the 1960s, Honda was the biggest motorcycle company in the world, producing about 1 million per month. In fact, Honda is still the largest motorcycle producer to this day. Not only was Honda a financial success, it was a racing success too. In 1966, Honda Motors took home the Constructors' Championships in all 5 motorcycle classes in the Grand Prix as the team with the most points at the end of the season. By this point, Honda bikes had won pretty much all of the major racing titles there was to win. Honda motorbikes were a huge success by all metrics. But Soichiro Honda still had one dream left that he hadn't fulfilled. It was finally time for his biggest and most ambitious project to date. With the holidays approaching, we all know most people put off shopping until the last minute. And if you have an online store or you sell anything online, you know the feeling of getting hit with a ton of orders all at once. When you're buried in orders and emails from stressed customers, you'll wish you had ShipStation. ShipStation works with all your favorite places to sell online, including Amazon, Etsy, eBay, Shopify, and more. You can manage every order from one simple dashboard, automate routine shipping tasks, print shipping labels, and easily compare rates and delivery times to make sure you're getting the best deal on every shipment. Basically, you'll save time, money, and stress during the holiday rush. Plus, it's so easy to get started with ShipStation. You can get set up within minutes. And since ShipStation is sponsoring this video, they've agreed that if you use my link below, you'll get 2 months to try it completely for free. So this holiday season, give yourself the gift of stress-free holiday shipping. Go to shipstation.com/magnates today and sign up for a free 60-day trial and start saving time and money on every shipment. That's shipstation.com/magnates to get started now for free. Ever since seeing his first car as a child, Honda had wanted to produce his own. And given his own humble beginnings, he especially liked the idea of making an affordable, quality car so almost everyone could experience having one. However, almost everyone told Honda that now he'd found success with making motorbikes, he should stick to that, as there was so much more competition in the car market, especially in America, where the big car brands were so dominant. But Honda had always been a risk taker, and after feeling like he'd conquered 2 wheels, he was now ready to move on to 4. Honda Motor Co.'s first automobile attempt was actually the T360 mini truck, which went on sale in 1963. But it wasn't popular and never sold very well. But as always though, when Honda got a setback like this, it just meant he had to figure out a new approach. Now, in the early 70s, there was a growing environmental movement with more concern about air quality and pollution. This resulted in US cities introducing the Clean Air Act, which forced stricter regulations on vehicles. Immediately, all of the big car manufacturers appealed this and said the new rules were impossible, whereas Honda simply said, "I'll find a way," and set about to build a new revolutionary engine that passed the new pollution tests. It was called the Compound Vortex Controlled Combustion Engine, and was not only more environmentally friendly, but also allowed people to travel further using less fuel. So whilst the established forces in the American car market were lobbying to scrap the regulations, Honda had been taking action and finding a solution. Honda himself would later comment, "When Congress passes new emission standards, we hire 50 more engineers, and GM hires 50 more lawyers." By 1972, he'd come up with the Honda Civic, which would be the first car to use this new CVCC engine. This energy-efficient, compact, and lightweight passenger car was the perfect answer to the oil crisis of 1973, where gas prices were so high. The Honda Civic was light on fuel, low on emissions, and reliable. Essentially, it was the perfect car at the perfect time. And the Honda Civic would soon become one of the most popular cars in the world. When sales of the Honda Civic crossed 1 million, Honda Motors then introduced the Accord. This was the more upscale model, intended to attract middle-class drivers looking to mix great design with a practical price point. Through word of mouth, Honda started to develop a reputation for reliability. Sales were increasing, and Honda established itself as one of the leading car manufacturers. When the Accord proved to be popular, Honda confidently entered the luxury car market as well by introducing the Acura brand to America in 1986, which also raked in large sales both in the US and Japan. Honda now had multiple different offerings for different types of consumers, all of which was selling well. Thus, by the end of the 1980s, Honda was the 3rd largest car company on the planet. After grappling with liver failure, Soichiro Honda succumbed to the disease and died in 1991. Upon his death, he held an estimated net worth of $92 million. In total, he'd registered over 150 different patents for different inventions. He had 3 sons, but none of them inherited the company. Honda and his business partner believed in meritocracy instead of nepotism, and that a business will survive when handled by highly skilled professionals rather than unskilled family members. Despite the massive loss of its founder, Honda Motors went on to conquer the American market through comprehensive reorganizations, improved automobile designs, and innovative marketing efforts. Of course, still to this day, Honda is one of the leading global car manufacturers, but has also gone on to expand into all kinds of new products, from jets to robots. It's crazy really, as Honda's life started out so bleak, with just a simple curiosity and love for working with tools and machines. But Honda knew what he wanted, and he committed to it. He took action and adjusted his approaches when things didn't work out as he'd expected. He understood that if you make a superior product, people will buy it, and he worked tirelessly to make that happen. Which is actually pretty similar to Lamborghini, which is an even crazier story you can watch right now by clicking the thumbnail on screen. Anyway, you are a legend for watching this video right to the end. Please remember to turn on notifications for more business mini movies from Magnates Media, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video in just a second. Cheers.